Hey everyone, welcome to the second Q&A portion of my vlog. It's Sunday evening. I asked for some questions earlier today. It was late in the afternoon. Unfortunately, I meant to post early in the morning, but I kind of slept in, and then I had a family reunion to go to, and I didn't have any service on my phone at the family reunion, so I didn't post my Q&A thing until like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. But, got my computer here. Got the questions lined up, so let's get into it. Let's see, what do we have here? Ad Riot by Cam, I think that's how you say it, wants to know why I left the Dusty Luck podcast. I touched on this a little bit last week, and I'll just go over again really quickly here because I actually get this question a lot. Basically, at the time, my wife then was working a lot, and she was off when we recorded the podcast. So, you know, I felt kind of bad about that since she wasn't home very often, and you know, consistently when she was home that one night a week I was recording a podcast and then editing it and uploading it and all that stuff. So Sean and Kyle and I tried to come up with a different time to record that would work for everybody. Had a little bit of a difficult time finding that time, and so, you know, I felt like it was more important to spend that time with my wife, so I bowed out of the podcast. In hindsight, maybe not the best decision, but they're doing a great job. Grant's awesome. I really enjoy listening to what they're doing. You know, they made some changes since I've left, and I think they're doing a great job, so kudos. If you aren't listening to the Dusty Life podcast, you definitely should, because it's awesome. Alright, next we have, this is from RC Rich 85, and he asks, what shop improvements are on my list to do if I have any? Any tool purchases that I haven't made? Wait a minute. Any tool purchases with you haven't made or thought you would use more often and just don't? Okay, so shop improvements. I live in northwestern Pennsylvania. My shop is cold as shit in the winter. I've got an awesome heater in there, but you know, when it's like -10 outside, that heater only gets it to like 40 degrees and it's not insulated. So before next winter, I'd really like to insulate my shop so that I can work out there, you know, without freezing my ass off. And the tool purchases, any that I haven't made or any that I have made that I don't use very often. One that I haven't made that I really want, and it's probably going to be next on my list, is a drum sander. It'd be awesome just to have a drum sander. I could run tabletops through it, I could run project parts through it. That's definitely on my wish list of tools and would most likely be my next, you know, big tool purchase. I did actually think about building one, and I've designed one. There are lots of plans out there for drum sanders and stuff, you know, DIY versions, but you know, there are very few with a conveyor that works on a motor as opposed to a hand crank. I definitely want one that's on a motor, and I want a big one. So you know, it's either shell out many thousands of dollars or come up with a way to build one. And building one might be cool if it's like a legit drum sander, you know what I mean? So I haven't decided yet. I'm not really in a place right now to drop a bunch of thousands of dollars on a drum sander. So building one might be an option. Plus it might be just fun to do even if, you know, it doesn't work. And any that I purchase that I don't use that often. You know, I'm not really one to regret buying a tool, even if it's a tool that I don't use very often, because when you need it, they come in really, really handy. But for the work that I do, I'd say probably the tools I use the least often would maybe be some sanders, like an oscillating spindle sander or my disc sander. You know, usually the things that I'm building are larger in scale, you know, dining room tables, coffee tables, furniture type things, and I just don't use those sanders that often. I guess I probably use my oscillating spindle sander more than my disc sander. But yeah, I mean, I don't regret buying them, but I just don't use them that often. They're just not in my everyday workflow. Let's see what else we got here. Windy Wood Creations asks, do I sand between coats of finish? And do you ever have issues with sandpaper plugging up with finish? And are there any solutions to that? I do sand between coats of finish. I usually start with 220. I usually put down 2 coats, and then I sand with 220, put down another coat, sand with a higher grit. It doesn't really matter what it is. You can go to 400, you can go to 320, whatever. Just something that's higher. And usually on my last coat, I usually do 4 or 5 coats. I'll give it just a really, really light sanding. I'm talking, you know, barely any pressure at all with a really high grit paper, maybe 1,000 grit, maybe steel wool, you know, depends on the finish. But, and the sheen that I want, you know, that kind of stuff. But yes, I do sand between grits. And the plugging up, usually you would have that problem if your finish isn't ready to be sanded yet. If you know, the finish is plugging up your sandpaper, then you're sanding too soon. What you should get when you sand finish is a nice fine white powder. If it's not white and powdery when you sand it, then you need to give it some more time to dry before you sand it. And you know, sanding between finishes, between coats of finish, is not like sanding wood. It's very, very, very light. And like I said, like the last iteration of sanding, I mean, I'm literally just running the sandpaper over, and I'm barely just pushing down enough to move the sandpaper. You know what I mean? But yeah, if it's getting clogged up, then you're sanding too soon. All right, the Old Plank Woodworks. This is sort of a reiteration from last week as well, but I'll say it again since there's some interest. If I had any choice of materials and access to any woods, what would my dream project be? I have 2, and they're both pretty common. I want to do a Maloof style rocker, like a sculpted rocker. That's on, you know, everybody's bucket list, I think, for the most part. And the other one would be a Bombay chest of drawers. That's way out of my league right now, but I am sort of preparing myself for it by doing this curved front stuff that I'm doing now. So these nightstands and the chest of drawers that I'm going to do for my bedroom, they have curved fronts, and a Bombay chest is, I mean, it's got curves every which way. It's got a curved front, it's got a bowed front, it's insane. The sides are curved and bowed. It's just tons and tons of curves, and I'm not ready to jump into it yet, but I'm getting ready to do that. So maybe once I get some practice under my belt, that'll be something I try to do in maybe the next couple years, I don't know. And then Castleback Workshop asks, have you ever had a total failure on a project where you had to completely start over? Yeah, I have. About a year ago, I guess a little over a year ago, I was working on these doors for a client, and I had done a bunch of other pieces for them in the same style. I did some credenzas and a table base where I had a bunch of walnut strips, 3/4 inch by 3/4 inch walnut strips going across the whole thing. I'll link a video in a card somewhere here. But they had me do some doors for them with a pane of glass in them and these walnut strips going across. And it gave me a lot of trouble. I think I messed up and had to start completely over 2 or 3 times. I was doing 2 doors? Either 2 or 3 doors in the same style, and I messed up a lot. At first I started trying to cut all the dados for the strips with a router jig, and then I built a sled for my table saw that would let me do the same thing, but the tolerances weren't precise enough on the sled, so I had cumulative error, and then I had to, the sled worked better than the router jig did, so I basically just had to re-engineer the sled and, you know, make it work a little bit better, and then, you know, finally it worked out. But it was a very frustrating, took way longer than it should have, and at the end of them I was done. I was not interested in doing that project at all anymore. But yeah, it's a crappy situation to be in. And finally, Todd Sarnstrom, Sarnbam here on Instagram. He wants to know what I'm listening to in the shop this week. I've been sort of on a Death Cab for Cutie kick lately. A lot of their old stuff. This week I've been listening to an album called We've Got the Facts and We're Voting Yes by Death Cab for Cutie. I think it came out in the late 90s, probably. It's an old indie rock band. They're still around. They're playing music and playing shows and stuff. I just came out with an album a couple years ago. They did a song when Trump was elected president. I don't want to get all political here, but not in his favor. It's called $1 Million Loan. So yeah, but usually I am listening to music in my shop. It's lately it's been music from when I was younger, so a lot of Death Cab stuff. Some Ryan Adams. He does sort of alt country stuff. I don't know, bunch of different junk. Ray LaMontagne, Radiohead. Less Than Jake is an old ska band. They're still playing music though. My son actually is into Less Than Jake. I thought that was really funny. Their new stuff. Yeah, that's it. Usually listen to podcasts in my car, not in my shop. Music's for the shop, podcasts are for the car. Alright, looks like that's all the questions. I apologize for getting the post out so late. So if you wanted to get a question in and didn't see the post or whatever, I apologize. But I really appreciate you guys asking the questions. It makes my Monday vlogs pretty easy. Sorry, I've got allergy thing going on. I was just out mowing and the allergies are killing me right now. So yeah, I really appreciate it and look forward to answering more of your questions next week. So if you didn't get the chance to ask one this week because I posted so late, every Sunday. Until no one has questions, I guess. Alright, guys. Oh, tomorrow. Today's Sunday. Tomorrow's Memorial Day. So, you know, consider what that means. And, celebrate appropriately. Alright, guys. See you tomorrow.